Howdy, howdy. We are live on another Friday night to initiate the hashtag TQIF weekly lineup. That is your destination every Friday for a lot of live fun on YouTube, starting with a live Tex-Trek podcast. Tonight, we're talking about this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery. And then later on, this gentleman, Starfleet Boy, is going to be hosting some fun on the Starfleet Boy After Dark channel.
That's right. And if you don't want spoilers for Spider-Man No Way Home,
then stay the F away.
Stay the F away.
I don't want
like
any. That's why I'm
be.
not going to be there. Yeah,
exactly.
You ain't seeing me.
And don't say anything about Spider-Man in the chat. Please respect Fatheree because he's looking at the chat. So please, nothing at all about Spider-Man.
I just have to make it a few more hours, then I'll finally get to see it. But in the meantime, though, we do have this whole new episode of Star Trek to talk about. So let's just go ahead and start the podcast, shall we?
Yes, we shall.
I'm Fatheree.
I'm Starfleet Boy.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
I was like that little bump at the end.
There you go. That's the cherry on top, isn't it?
It sure is.
Well, welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 169th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek old and new, and proud members of the TrekSphere network. Tonight, we are talking about Star Trek Discovery Season 4, Episode 5, The Examples, written by Kyle Jarrow and directed by Lee Rose. We're going to get into that in just a minute. Before I say anything about that episode, though, I just want to remind everyone we are 1 week away from what, Starfleet Boy?
We are 1 week away from... What are we 1 week away?
From Christmas Eve.
You handed that to me on a plate. I was so focused on Star Trek that I was like, what did I forget?
Oh.
Yes, we are 1 week away from Christmas.
So I just want to remind everyone that we're not going to be live on Friday night next week because that is Christmas Eve. So we're actually going to move the show to Saturday to 7 p.m. Saturday night Central Time. I'll be here. I don't know who else. It might just be me in the audience talking about next week's episode.
I'll join you.
Well, sounds like we'll have Starfleet Boy. We're going to do the same thing for New Year's also. So we're not going to cut into any Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve celebrations, but we will be on those following Saturdays, on actual Christmas Day and actual New Year's Day.
We're going to do the same thing on Starfleet Boy for our After Dark that week.
Instead of TQIF, it'll be TQIS.
TQIS.
We should just make it thank you, it's Christmas.
Yeah, actually, that's what it'll be. Thank you, it's Christmas. There we go. Yo, Geek and Review, what's up?
So that'll be fun. That's how we'll be bringing in the Christmas holiday celebrations and also the New Year 2022. Just want to let everyone know that you can look forward to that. And then in January, we're going to be doing Prodigy and Discovery episodes every week. So we'll have extra stuffed podcast full of not one, but 2 episodes of Star Trek that we're going to break down and take a deep look. Might not be as deep of a look as we typically do, but that's the price you pay. When you just have the embarrassment of riches that we have now with 5 Star Trek shows in production.
I like that. The embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, that's what it is. That is what it really and truly is. I also want to throw this out there. Just if anyone wants to help support Tex-Trek and give us a Christmas gift, then one way to do that is to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are trying to boost subscribers. Even if you listen to the podcast and you don't really use YouTube, or that's not how you get your Tex-Trek content, it still really helps us out if you can just log into YouTube with your Gmail and then give us a subscribe. We're trying to build up subscribers so we can grow. And if you haven't already rated us on the podcast side of things, you can go to Apple Podcast or whatever podcast app you use and give us a 5-star rating or whatever, thumbs up or whatever they have in whatever app you use. That also really helps us out. So if you watch us on YouTube but you don't listen to the podcast, but you have Apple Podcast, for example, then you could still help us, give us a little Christmas gift by going over there and giving us a 5-star. So just throw that out there. We would appreciate it.
Merry Christmas, Tex-Trek. That's what I'm doing right after this broadcast.
Well, thank you. I hope that others follow your example. But speaking of the examples, let's talk about the examples.
Let's do it.
Star Trek Discovery Season 4, Episode 5.
Could have been a good name for like a rough and tumble crew of, kind of like similar to the the Expendables or whatever. It's like the examples. Send them into your worst Starfleet missions. No, what happened?
I was just trying to secure my dog. Sorry.
Okay. I was like, that totally, like, he hated that joke. He was like,
no, I was trying to get the dog to stop walking around so people didn't have to hear his little tippy toes. But no, we just went and drew attention to it. So, anyways, that's the joys of doing things live. Sometimes stuff like that happens. That's something that you see on the YouTube side that you don't hear on the podcast side because I edit that out.
Oh, yeah, you did, yeah.
What I won't edit out is this next bit. We are going to recap the episode real quick by just reading the official synopsis, and then I'll kind of expand on that with spoilers to remind everyone what happened, and then we will each give our opening statements to express our broad impressions of the episode. But as far as the actual story of the episode itself goes, the synopsis reads, Burnham and Book race to evacuate a group of stranded colonists in the anomaly's path as one of the Federation's brightest scientists come aboard the USS Discovery to do high-stakes research with Saru and Stamets. Yeah, and so basically we have a colony trying to evacuate from the anomaly, and they don't want to evacuate their prisoners. They're not considering those people a priority at all, so Burnham and Book have to go save the people from the prison. And while that's going on, we have some science experiments going on the Disco that reveal some secrets about the anomaly. And we learn that there's more to it. It's actually weaponized. It's man-made. It is something being controlled by someone with extraordinary power. So, let's just give our opening statements, and then we'll go in beat by beat and analyze everything in great detail. But before we do that, Starfleet Boy, I need to know, what was your general takeaway, just kind of your broad feelings about this episode?
I was really taken by this episode. I was caught in with all the drama, and I really liked the science-y part of it. I think that overall it just like kind of flowed very nearly as perfect as you can get for like what I consider a Star Trek episode. It had a little bit of everything, like just references to the past, like little mysteries that also make sense that are references, and it had technobabble that was executed beautifully. And I don't know, it's just I liked all the little ideas and the big idea, but I was particularly moved by the performance of the actor who played Felix gave. I don't know, I just got like so into it and really vibe with that character and his story. There's a little bit of Les Mis going on there with the unjust sort of punishment fitting, not fitting the crime or whatever. And I like that a lot about it too. So yeah, overall, I think this was a very, if not one of the most memorable episodes for me so far of Star Trek Discovery. It's one that I really want to watch over and over again. I'm bummed I only got to watch it twice so far.
Well, for me, And I just want to remind everyone, I was really digging the show last week. I was saying, oh yeah, season 4 is my favorite season of Star Trek Discovery so far. Last week was my favorite episode of the season. And then this was probably the episode this week that I enjoyed the least because of something really specific. But right off the bat in this episode, when we get the conversation in the ready room, I believe, when they say, or maybe they're in the science lab on the disco, but when they say like, oh, look, we have proof that the anomaly is man-made and someone's controlling it, my heart kind of sank pretty quickly as soon as I heard that. It was kind of a gut punch because I was really enjoying the idea of a season that didn't have a big bad, where there's no like villain at the season finale that you have to fight. You know, I didn't want like another Osira. I wanted this to be more of a story of, you know, man versus this versus nature versus something, you know, that's as much as they're doing kind of an allegory for the COVID pandemic, I think is pretty clear, and kind of a traditional Star Trek way where it's not too subtle but not too on the nose. It's kind of in that little heavy-handed but not too much territory that Star Trek typically treads in. You know, that's the whole thing, is like, oh yeah, like the pandemic doesn't care. You can't reason with the virus. You can't change its mind. It's going to do what it's going to do. And it's all about like our reactions to that and how we work together, how we become scared, what people do when they're panicked, what people do, you know, all of that type of stuff. I thought that's what we were going to get this season, so I'm disappointed by that. However, I still enjoyed most everything else in this episode. So even though conceptually I don't like the story that they were telling me, at least the season arc part of it, but the execution of everything was Johnny on the spot. I was really pleased with the pacing of this episode. Like you said, I thought they did a really good job making things feel kind of traditional Star Trek, with some, you know, moral quandaries, like Burnham has to decide, you know, is it right to let this guy die, or does he need to be saved against his will? And you know, they don't play it cheap. They actually like have her make a choice and then stand by her choice. So I appreciate that. And as much as it felt like traditional Star Trek, it still maintained like that Discovery modern energy and polish. So I'm very disappointed in the season-long story arc, but I like the way that they handled this episode specifically. That's where I'm at.
I share your disappointment with the reveal that someone's behind the anomaly, but I am holding my, like, I'm gonna give them a chance. I'm gonna wait for my true like outrage until the season comes a little further along.
I mean, I like the show.
I feel
I'm
like
still gonna watch it. You know, I'm gonna enjoy the things that I'm gonna enjoy. But it's not gonna be as good as what I hoped for in all likelihood. I don't think it's gonna match what I was hoping. Maybe it'll surprise me. I don't think it will. We'll find out.
We are going to find out. We are going to find out indeed.
We can go ahead and go into the episode breakdown. We're just going to take each story beat and discuss it in detail. But let's begin at the beginning, and then we'll kind of go into our A story with Book and Burnham and their rescue mission. But the story starts off really dramatically with some sharp visuals that kind of leave an impression when we see the anomaly, just its sheer size and scale just kind of dwarf these 3 badass 32nd century ships. And then all of a sudden the anomaly just ups and disappears and teleports itself 1,000 light years away. And that's where we get the indication, the characters conclude that, oh, this must be something that someone created, that someone's controlling. Jet Reno is back, so that's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And then we have the meeting at Starfleet HQ with Vance, where he tells the disco crew that they need to go team up with, what was his name? Ruron Tarka?
Ruron Tarka, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be working with him. And also they're going to have a rescue mission at the colony Redvic 5, which is now probably they're not unsure at the time, but it's probably in the path of the anomaly. We do, of course, eventually find out that it does get destroyed. But yeah, there's 1,206 people that need to be evacuated in 4 hours. I love when they have like a dramatic ticking clock. So like that's not a lot of time, and 4 hours to evacuate over 1,000 people.
Yeah. Hey, Father, do you know by any chance Matt on my stream mentioned that the D in an emergency could beam up 300 people? Like, I wonder if that would like burn, like it's just once 300 people, like, and it would burn out their like whole relay or whatever.
Yeah, I wasn't sure why they're beaming them up 40 at a time, but it
Yeah,
seemed a
it's
little.
just a little. That was like a little minor thing, but yeah, it was convenient
weird to
plot
me, too.
convenience that the transporters had a limit. I think they could have stuck a line in for sure that said something like because of the interference, but like we can just assume that as well. Like,
Yeah.
Or
I think they might have been doing like site to site beaming, where like the Discovery is like beaming them off of the colony, but they're beaming them to like one of the other ships.
Oh,
or
true.
something like that.
Could be something like
Or maybe
that, yeah.
the 23rd century transporters on the Discovery never got upgraded.
I just find that hard to believe. The whole ship's upgraded, but well, whatever.
The other remarkable thing, I guess, here at the beginning was that Book is like really gung ho about rescuing people, but now he's like almost like too gung ho. Like he's like determined, like no one else will die from this. I'm gonna save everyone. Like I couldn't save my planet, so I'm gonna save every other planet.
Yeah, that was like kind of hard to watch because I knew he wasn't gonna get like fulfilled by that. Like that's like a losing proposition.
I like the motivation
space.
though. I think the way they've written Book this season has been very interesting, and I think this motivation's kind of compelling.
David Ajala this season is really getting wings in a sense with his character.
He needs to be the lead in his own show or do movies or something.
But then that would
he could carry his show. Or he could
that would
carry
mean
a
they
movie.
break up though. I like this whole couple on a ship, with the captain.
I do too. I love that they
in charge.
The only other captain they did this with ever was Cisco.
Yeah,
they gave him like a serious ongoing romantic partner, and everyone else, it was like one episode. It was like a one and done. They're gone.
Yeah, poor Picard.
I guess
Darren.
Janeway hung on to Mark for a long time, but we never saw them together. We never saw them in the same room. So
right on.
But the name 10C, like the bad guys are godlike aliens that are controlling this. Like they're classified as the 10C. And I was like, I don't know. I kind of like rolled my eyes at that. But
why?
It is what it is.
Yeah, I guess so.
Focus on the positive stuff. I'm glad to see Jet Reno. Apparently, we're going to see a lot of her this season. We see a lot of her this episode. So, we lost Tilly, but now we have Jet stepping up into the spotlight.
So, Fatheree, I don't know. Do you know, is Tig Notaro actually there, or is she like superimposed into these scenes when
she's actually there? I think.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why. She was unable to travel to Toronto when they first started shooting because, as I recall, she didn't want to fly because she's immunocompromised from her battle with cancer. She was avoiding airports. She was, I think, waiting on either to be vaccinated or waiting on the other people to start to be vaccinated or whatever. But
just to be a little safer, yeah.
Yeah, and she did say, like, I will get to Toronto eventually. We're going to do some more shooting in May, and if I have to drive up there, I will. And so, so she missed out on, like, the first third of the season. But it looks like she's, here we are in episode 5, and she's present and accounted for.
It was great to have her character and Tig Notaro back on the show. Her character is one of my favorites, and I love her little quips and one-liners. They're just delightful, and I thought this episode didn't disappoint in that sense.
Something that Dave had mentioned before on a previous podcast we did for Disco Season 4 is that, Discovery, and I never mean this in a negative way when I say it, but it's the touchy-feely show. It's the one where, like, everyone hugs, everyone, cries for each other. It's very, like, sentimental. Like, these characters are, like, super supportive of each other, though. Like, they stand up and clap for each other all the time. And I'm not saying that, like, a bad thing. Some people kind of make fun of that, but I kind of like it. I think a lot of people who, like, really love Discovery, like, this is, like, their Star Trek. This is, like, to them what Deep Space Nine is to me. I think a lot of them really connect with that element of it, and I totally understand the appeal there. But I do think it is fun to have a character in there who's just gonna roll their eyes at that and just kind of just throw a wrench into the gears of all of the warm chumminess. So without Philippa Georgiou, I think that Jet Reno is essential. I think there's definitely there is a Tig Notaro shaped hole on the Discovery that she just fits perfectly.
Yeah, and on top of that, she's very Starfleet too. Like, she's just like a cool, like, that's the thing that I think I like more is like when Emperor Giorgio was doing it, you'd be like, "Arr." But when Tig does it, it's like, it's funny because she's one of us, you know, like one of the character, like one of the crew.
I enjoyed Giorgio a lot too. But,
no, I enjoyed it too, but you know, there's a little bit of like, you don't you say that about our crew. Like when Q does it, I'm a little mad at Q.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, you know, she's part of the family, so it's okay for her to like make jokes and stuff. You know, you can
exactly.
You'll tolerate things from your family members you would never tolerate from someone else
until you don't. But yes, that's true.
Well, I guess let's go ahead and get into the Redvik 5 mission itself when they spore jump over to the colony.
That's a cool looking colony, let me just say.
It was cool, yeah. I really liked it.
Yeah. I'm sure you might have something in the Gornags. I don't know if you decided to put it in there.
Well, you know, the notable thing that and I'm not sure if you caught it, but the alkali. How do you say the name of this alien species?
I think it's like that, the alkali or the alkali or something.
But they're a legacy Trek species.
Oh yeah, I didn't catch it right away. I found out from Twitter why, but you're saving that for the Gornags, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll get into that later. But you know, I thought that was cool to bring in someone familiar.
Yeah, it's cool to see what's happened to them. That's like part of the charm of like Lower Decks visiting TOS era civilizations. It's kind of cool to see us come back to a civilization we haven't seen since.
Well, it looked like Beta 3 didn't change much from the original series of Lower Decks.
Yeah, it's true.
These people have changed a lot since we saw them last on Star Trek Enterprise. But yeah, as soon as I saw them, I was like, "Oh, that's a Mike Westmore alien. That's not the species from Communicator, is it? That's someone in Enterprise." And then I just checked Memory Alpha right after I watched the episode, and I was like, "Okay, it's the Civilization aliens." But yeah, episode 9 of the show, I believe.
Yeah. Depending
on how you count Broken Bow as 1 or 2. But yeah, so they can only beam up 40 people at a time, but they have Glenn Reese is excited to help because he'll later say his town was destroyed by a hurricane when he was a kid and Starfleet evacuated. I assume that was like on a colony somewhere. I wouldn't think that happened on
where they didn't have as good a weather control grid or something like that.
Well, I don't think Starfleet would do evacuations like on. I mean, maybe they would, but I feel like Earth has
Earth its own
forces that would take care of that.
Do it. It's true. But yeah, Jen Reese, I like you. Did you say his name was Gen or Jen? I think
Jen.
It's Jen.
Yeah, I always say it Glenn, but it's Jen.
Oh,
that's a weird name, is Jen, and it's spelled weird too, like the way that they spell Reese. It's kind of like a future space name version.
Yeah,
it's like RHYS. I don't know anyone named Reese in contemporary Earth who spells it that way.
Jonathan Rhys Meyers, I think, spells his name that way.
Okay, maybe some people do.
That's cool. I just realized that. I never thought about the spelling before.
The AR wall continues to look cool, but it always kind of feels AR wall-ish. Like I always know, like I immediately recognized last week when they were on the snow planet. I was like, oh, the AR wall looks really, wait a minute. They're actually on location. You know, for some reason, it always kind of stands out. But I liked the design of this planet. Like the floaty things remind you're in the 32nd century. There's some Vasquez rock type formations. I don't know about the Nerissa beetle, like the weaponized beetles. It felt like a very like Doctor Who idea. It's kind of whimsical, like these explosive beetles that can shoot these razor wheels at you.
I hadn't thought of that, but you're absolutely right. This is totally a Doctor Who type, especially like the blades. Yeah, the flying blades that come at you.
Like if some aliens like did this on Doctor Who, I'd think nothing of it. On Star Trek, it's like a little weird. But you know, we don't know that much about the Emerald Chain, so maybe they do stuff like this all the time. Book says it's common for them to weaponize hide weapons within life forms. So
I actually feel this is kind of like, in a weird way, like some of the weirder stuff that you got on the animated series, like what it would look like if you live actioned it. And I feel like these could also have been on the animated series and like as a defense mechanism of some sort.
But yeah, the design of everything looked cool. I liked the camaraderie and kind of just the banter of Book and Burnham. I like that we get to see them, continue to do like little missions together. And they're kind of a cute couple. And, when they're talking about like, oh, when you blew up that noodle stand, I got noodles all in my hair. And, remind us that they had that history that, oh, yeah, they were doing like the just friends thing for a long time. They acknowledge like, yeah, we really did that for a long time. But, and Burnham saying, well, I was, trying to keep it trying to keep it professional.
And he's like, that wasn't fun for either of us. I like that. Like follow up to that. Looking at this, I'm like kind of astonished. You're like I personally can kind of guess at where the AR wall might begin and stuff like that, but it looks pretty damn good compared to previous seasons. Like we didn't get this kind of like level of depth, I don't feel like, and just like it looks like they're on this planet. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the AR wall, and I'm hoping that they have some really impressive stuff with it saved for later in the season. I think it's had a few different locations where you could see like these really big open spaces though, and it kind of fleshes out this 32nd century Star Trek universe that we're not that used to yet. Like for example, like seeing Navarre with like the floaty science stations and stuff like that. Just being able to show off different worlds like that in kind of an unfamiliar setting for even long-term Star Trek fans. We've only had one season in this 32nd century before this, and now like we're really getting to see more of it now that they're able to travel a little bit more, and they have. Even though I guess they're all focused on the anomaly, it does kind of seem like they have like a wider variety of missions now than
I do. I feel that too this season. Like the mission aspect.
The mission last year is like we got to find Starfleet, and then like they finally find Starfleet, and then it was like okay, we got to like solve the burn.
Right.
Then they had a little detour to like fix Philippa for a little bit, but.
Right, it's true.
Here it's like kind of a variety of different things happening, but they're all kind of related to the anomaly. But they're still, we're like, oh, well, we have this murder nun killing people because she's trying to protect the planet from the anomaly. Or like, oh, we have to go investigate the anomaly. Or, oh, we have to rescue a science station that's spinning out of control. Or here, like, oh, we have to go evacuate a colony. They are like kind of like different missions, but they have like that one connective thread between them.
Yeah, I totally see that. It's a great point. I think it's funny, in a way it's like I hear a lot of complaints about how like Captain Burnham just keeps like continues to insert herself in all these big things, but like I feel like that's what you got to do. Like that's otherwise how else would the Discovery be there? It's like it's partially plot convenience, but it's also because that's just who Captain Burnham is. She wants to be at the heart of the action. She wants to make a difference, as Kirk said. Like as long as you're in that captain's chair, you can make a difference. And I feel like she's just grabbing at opportunities, and I applaud her for that. I don't think it's a
well. I think every Star Trek captain does that, but
Picard might not have done that. He was a little like, well, we could just let these people die.
The fucking dude who like he shows up at Earth and he's like, I'm Captain Picard and I'm taking command of this fleet. Everyone shoot at these coordinates.
No, I'm 100% teasing. He does do it, but you're right. He does do that. He's like, it's true. He's like, he takes command of the fleet.
I mean, that's what your lead character should do on a Star Trek show. Yeah, no, exactly. If they're like, oh well, I guess this other ship's gonna handle it. We're gonna go scan this nebula.
It's one of those.
I don't want to watch that show.
Yeah, it's one of those critiques that I find like the question is like, well, then what would happen instead? Like, I guess that's what I should ask. I mean,
like I can understand people maybe being annoyed when Burnham tells the Admiral, like, I'll go head up the evacuation myself. Like,
that's what
that probably should have been phrased as a question. Like she should have like
Admiral, could I lead this? I do like that
Yeah.
in this show, though. Do you notice that in that specific scene, like Admiral Vance, kind of like for a second, he likes Michael, so he's kind of like, okay, I'll let it slide. But you could tell he's like, wait, okay, should I say something now? Like, should I be like, no, just to
But at the
prove a
same
point?
time, like I could totally hear like Cisco saying that, to an admiral or
Yeah,
something, and we'd just be like,
yeah,
"I'll head it up myself,"
I get,
and that
yeah.
confidence.
That's what I'm saying is that I guess like it's just a matter of your perspective. It is cool that Discovery prompts all this discussion though. It is neat to hear opinions about authority and like depending on the character whether you tolerate it or not. It's really interesting.
Well, let's talk about the prison when they actually get into the prison and they meet these prisoners in there. We have 6 of them, but 2 of them never talk or never get close-ups because they were extras apparently, and they, they didn't want to pay them the union actor fees. They wanted to pay them extra fees. But yeah,
Would you say
there's
that
6
these are
total
the
prisoners.
sinister six, Fatheree? No, I'm sorry.
Probably not. They none of them really
Another
seem
bad joke.
sinister. They're all very innocent,
Yeah, it's true.
crimes. But yeah, we learned from the magistrate on the disco that like, oh yeah, like we're not gonna rescue them. Emerald Chain policy is that you're locked up for life to be made an example. We do learn that one of them's not so innocent with, Felix. He actually committed murder. They don't tell us that up front. It makes me wonder though, like none of these other people, like the woman who's describing everything, how like, oh yeah, this is all bullshit. We were arrested for things like stealing food to feed a family, or cheating at cards, or taking a joyride in a stolen vehicle. And if this is only a colony of 1,200 people, that's not that many. That'd be like a pretty small town. Uh, I'm not sure like how there could have been like someone committed murder there, and he's like everyone doesn't know. Like he would have been like all the newspapers and everything. But
That's a really good point.
for some reason, like none of them seem to know that Felix had murdered someone, and it had to have been here. If this is where they're keeping him prisoner. But did you think this was kind of intentional with the with COVID, with some real life allegory with the way that we treated prisoners in our criminal justice system? At the beginning of COVID, there was like zero concern, and with the prison population being
100%.
infected.
And not just during these times. I think for a very long time now, our prison system and our law enforcement system has become something that it wasn't intended to be. And I think that like this is just one example or one illustration of like the kind of atrocities that are happening, and the unfair, like what was once considered justice seems not so much like justice anymore. So yeah, I think I think this was a hard, like a very hard metaphor for what's happening in like, reality right now. But yeah, in particular, like one thing, Father, of note is that I don't think any of these prisoners are or maybe one is, but they're a Kali or a K, or however you say the name of the,
Yeah, a couple of them were, and then a couple of them look human.
okay.
Like I think Felix is human. He has
Felix
he has
might
an
be
Earth
human, yeah.
name. He
So I get the
has an
impression
Earth
that
face.
like oh yeah, I see that guy is okay, but I get the impression that like maybe they're used as examples, but it's possible that some of the other ones that came from
There might
Go
be
ahead.
racial bias.
And there might be racial biases.
They should have done. They should have made like all of them a different speed, or at least like 5 out of 6. Because that. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a major issue with our prison system, which is largely the criminal justice system in the United States is used to transfer wealth from taxpayers to the prison industrial complex. The people who make for-profit prisons and whatnot, and we insanely over incarcerate one specific demographic, primarily black men more than anyone else, even though like the big things, I guess, being like drug related crimes, when white people use drugs like the same rate as black people, but rarely go to prison for it. So yeah, it is very insane, and like other countries like make fun of us for like China points that out whenever people criticize them on human rights issues. They always say like in the United States you have like this huge ethnic minority that is so over incarcerated. We have more people in prison than any other nation in the world. It's shameful. I kind of wish that they did kind of focus on
go
that
further.
in this episode. They had like a good opportunity to do that.
There was a good opportunity to do that, but I guess then it would have been critiqued for being a little too too more too heavy-handed. But I wouldn't have minded. I think this kind of subject matter is good to be highlighted and called.
I mean,
out.
we're the franchise that like, okay, we're gonna talk about racism, but we're gonna have one dude who's half white and half black, and another dude who's half black and half white. I mean, like,
yeah, it's true. Why not? Yeah, it's true. Good point.
It's okay to be a little on the nose with this stuff.
Yep.
But I didn't know if we needed like the added complication of they have to shoot their phasers at that force field generator for so long. But I did like that their phasers had sustained beams instead of bolts. I'm a fan of the sustained beam.
Me too. I really
Star
like
Trek.
the sustained beam phaser. It's true.
But it's like right after that when they get everyone out, and they do have that conversation about like, oh, well, we don't want to go with you. We're gonna run off and try to find our own ship or hope that the anomaly doesn't hit us. We don't want to spend the rest of our lives in prison. But as soon as like they kind of get them to agree, when Burnham's like, "Oh, let me Google this. Okay, let me look at like this rule here. Oh, look, you can become political asylums. I can take you on board Discovery as political refugees." So okay, like they all agree to that, and then they get like the door closes and locks down, and they have to use those beetles to bust it open. So it's like, did we really need like the complication of like having to shoot the force field generator for so long? Or we're going to get that blasted in time. Okay, we got it blasted. Everyone, we're good to go. And then we get like the door locks on us again. Like I feel like you could have just gone to the explosive beetles and having to blast the door. But
while it did feel like a video game sequence, like
I thought that too. Yeah, it was like a video game. Well, it's like, oh, you unlock the ability to control the beetles, and now you have to use that ability.
Yeah, totally. I do like the dialogue and everything that was going on. I like that, like, it kind of like I love that like lost year of Book and Burnham, how we get little hints at it and just what they were getting into, and like
fertile
like
ground
that.
for the novels. I think they've already done one novel set in that lost year.
On. Yeah, it is fertile ground, but yeah, I do appreciate it, and so I kind of enjoyed the scene, but I did 100% feel like, oh, this like would play way better in a video game, like, because you'd be like trying your best to like like do all these things, and then in particular, I think that it's interesting the way that this character Felix was like tugging at or playing at Burnham's what he knows, like he seems to really know the Federation's like stance, if
he knew he could like guilt them into doing the right thing.
Yeah, like it's so interesting like how he was definitely playing them, and I thought that was like an interesting thing, because
you got to do that sometimes. You got to like pull on people's heartstrings. You a lot of people really like to think of themselves as like a compassionate bleeding heart liberal, but if something's not brought to their attention, it might be sliding under their radar, and so you gotta like put it in their face and be like, no, like, look at this, pay attention to that. Like, you need to do better with this.
He was so brilliant at that, and he literally like secured, I mean, like, it forced Burnham to like look through regulations. And I also like that no one knew the regulations like right away, because like she does know a lot of regulations. She's very good at that stuff.
She's had she's had like a 1,000 years to like catch up on.
Right, it's true.
Like I'm kind of surprised that when Vance mentioned the Q continuum, she didn't
like, say that was.
Oh, I gotta Google that now. So they haven't been a thing in 600. I guess like the Q are such like a big deal. Yeah, like that's one of the first things you would hear about. But totally. They haven't been around in 600 years. But, I liked Felix. I agree with you. He was a very compelling guest star. I think we had like 2 guest stars this week that really shined. That really stood out.
That's the thing. We didn't just have one compelling guest star. We had 2, which was pretty awesome. You're right.
But I liked Felix. This wouldn't have worked as well if you kind of didn't care about this dude. But yeah, he just had like that presence and that gravitas, and I believe him. was the actor made it believable when
Right.
he's clearly concerned not with himself but with the well-being of the prisoners around. Like he's taking that to heart. Like he's like, I have done this terrible deed and now I must make up for it, and I'm going to be a good person for other people and be a good person for these other prisoners here that I deserve to be here but they don't. No one else did anything as bad as what I did. Like I believe that, and it also parallels the Culber story we're going to get to in a moment in the C story with Culber also being concerned, I guess overly concerned with everyone else instead of himself.
Right on. His name is Michael Gray Eyes, which is a cool name, by the way.
And I assume he's a Canadian, what they would call a First Nations person.
A First Nations person.
Indigenous population. But most of the guest stars in Star Trek Discovery are Canadian. It's rare they bring in like other American actors.
Right.
Well, I mean, they make
true.
sense. Like they shoot in Toronto, so.
Right.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Now, let me ask you a question about the Leloe orb, or Leloe. However, there's some weird.
Yeah, I think it
words
was
in
like
this
something
episode.
like that. Yeah.
But that orb that he's been holding on to for 30 years in prison. How do you think he was able to hide it from the guards and keep it in when he was arrested and locked up and put in this little prison cell?
They must be like bioactivated, and so when anyone touches it but the person it's meant for, it doesn't give off energy or anything. So I imagine like it escape like scanners. But also, there's places where people can hide things, Father, in prison. I'm just gonna say, and like people can't find them there.
So what's awkward is that I watched this shortly after I rewatched Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War. Or I should say like Infinity War and then Endgame.
Right.
But in Infinity War, the character Rocket Raccoon gives the character Thor a little cyborg eye. And he's like, I would have watched that before I put it in. When I stole that, I had to hide it up my he's cut off. But I was just thinking of that whenever I saw this guy in prison with this orb. So, I mean,
no doubt. That's
we just got to assume that that's what happened, right?
It has to. I mean,
it's Christopher Walken's watch in Pulp Fiction. So apologies for being gross, but
I think we tried not to be. I hope that was conveyed. But it's a serious question. Like, where do you hide these things? And
let's talk about let's talk about the end of Felix's story after they get the other prisoners beamed back up. Oh, by the way, I do want to mention that prison, it was like cut off from like transporters and also communication. So when Burnham was looking up all those regulations and stuff, that was all like stored on her Tricom badge. Didn't like connect to the cloud back on the ship.
I would imagine a copy of the book, like the Starfleet, operational manual, is like hard. It probably
the storage capacity probably has like a backup copy of all of Wikipedia, or it's like the entire internet is on you at all times.
It must be insane, the storage amount, the amount of like what we imagine, because like devices this small now we can hold like a terabyte or more. Like some devices this small we have today hold like 2 terabytes, which I think the internet's only like 10 terabytes or something like that. So you can imagine that like a device in the future could store way more information on its local hard storage or local storage.
But what do you think about Felix's choice to stay behind, where he felt like he deserved to be in the prison? Maybe he'll get killed by the anomaly. Maybe his prison guards would return and keep him incarcerated. Book, is clearly like, that's fucked up. We can't let him just kill himself. We got to beam him up with us. And Burnham's like, no, like, we have to respect his agency. If this is what he wants, then, who are we to correct him? What choice would you have made in that situation?
Like, honestly, ultimately, I think I would have chosen to side with Burnham. I'm a huge proponent of agency, and like, as long as you're not harming anyone else, it's your choice what you do with your personage. Like I believe in I support the right to die and things like that. So I think that, like, to me, this was like still a hard choice though, because personally while I support all those things, in like, it would be heartbreaking especially if I liked someone, to not want to save them or help them, so I was like, I could see book side, but ultimately, like as a captain, I think that while it was a tough and ambiguous decision, I think that Burnham made the right choice. And like on a technicality, like will she be admonished for this? Probably not once she explains the whole situation and everything, like, and there's a record of it, and and all that stuff. So I think she'll be fine that in that regard, but it might weigh on her later. Although I will say, it's tough. It's a tough one, Father, but I think I would have made the Burnham choice. What about you?
I definitely like understand where Burnham's coming from, and I respect her for actually making a tough call and standing by it, and I get where she's coming from, but I don't think I could have done that. I would have stayed there like as long as I could to try to like talk them into it, and then it's like, okay, like the anomaly is about to hit in like 2 minutes, you got to beam up now. I would have been like, okay, I'm just taking you against your will. Like
You could have just done it, yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. I wonder how it could have gone though, because like we've seen in Star Trek, whenever that happens, the person ends up committing suicide or something like that. Anyways, no, it's true. Like what I mean. And the, like,
I don't know. I would have put him on a suicide watch on the ship.
But how long can you keep that up?
Put him in like therapy with Kolber. I would have been like, no, like you can still like contribute to the universe.
I love
like,
it. No, I love
like
that.
You can still be like a good person and a functional member of society. And
I agree.
I would have tried to do that, but I'm not dissing Burnham. I'm glad that they actually had the characters make a choice instead of like something else happens. He gets hit by an asteroid and they don't have to worry about it, or something like that. Because sometimes Star Trek will just ask questions, but then they never answer them. It does that a lot, actually, and I don't mind it most of the time, but sometimes it is a little frustrating. Like, you coward! Like, actually pick a side and have your characters stand by it. So I'm glad that they did that here.
Right on.
But it was cool the conversation they exchanged the comm badge for the orb. So Burnham will deliver it to the I don't know what Felix's plan was, if he's going to be in prison for his entire life and only be around other people in prison for their entire lives, how he was going to get that orb back to the little girl. But I guess he was just, hoping one day he would find an opportunity, maybe find like a compassionate guard in prison, or, somehow, some way. I mean, he eventually did, so I guess I can't blame him if that's what was going on. But he looked pretty cool standing there. Just that environment of the floaty platforms, the two suns, the Vasquez rock-looking rocks. I like that. Like, okay, like you can kind of tell that it's on a set, but it's meant to be like this exotic outdoor location, just in like a good way. It kind of gave me a little TOS nostalgia. I kind of like that. Like the fake rocks. I want Star Trek to be a show where people are hanging out around a bunch of fake rocks. It just feels Star Trek-y to
These
me.
are fake rocks in the most excellent way you can have them, but it's true. They look like fake rocks, but like harkening back to TAS, I feel like the animated series got this had some of these levels of funky designs on planets that TOS couldn't do, but like and so again, it's nice to see like things that remind us of the animated series. I've become a big fan because of you, Father. So thanks.
I love the animated series.
Yeah, thanks for reinvigorating my interest in that. That's cool.
If you like the original series and you can tolerate 70s filmation style animation, then you should love the animated series. It is more TOS. In some ways, it can kind of be better than TOS because they have like these punchier, shorter episodes. A lot of them are paced extraordinarily well, and I think some original series episodes would benefit from the shorter runtime, like the animated series gave. But I mean, I love the original series. It's my second favorite show, and I shouldn't count them as one show, but I kind of do mentally just kind of lump the animated series on as a little more original series. No disrespect to all the talented people who worked on that show, because they deserve all the credit in the world for having their own Star Trek show. But enough about that. We have podcasts talking about the animated series from last year with the authors of the guide to the animated series book. We had Aaron Harvey on the show, and we also had Rich Shepis on the show. So if you want to hear me talk about the animated series with Dave and the authors of the guide to the animated series, go check out those podcast episodes. We through 2 episodes, we go through all 22 episodes of the animated series in 2 podcast episodes.
And they're really cool guys, and they know a lot about Star Trek, and you should follow them on Twitter too if you're so inclined, because they're pretty neat.
Here's one thing I didn't understand in this episode was when we see Felix standing on the asteroid as it's already started to move towards the sun, but we still see like 2 stationary suns in the background behind them. How does that work?
That's the wait, say it again. Hold on.
So he's on the asteroid. When we see like all the asteroids that form that colony are pushed by the anomaly into the,
which is huge.
Well, I guess
by the way.
one of the suns.
Yeah,
I don't know how many. I don't know how many.
It could be a
stars are in this
trinary
system.
star system.
Yeah, it could be a trinary. But even if it's a trinary system and he's moving to that sun, I feel like the 2 behind him wouldn't be in the same location, like they wouldn't be stationary anymore. They would be moving. I kind of wish that for that last shot of Felix, when everything goes bright and he, I guess we assume is destroyed by the heat of this star that he's pushed into. I wish they just kind of would have had this like a bright light in the sky behind them, or something like those 2 suns are like washed away by something.
So I will say that those could also be satellites, like moons, but or
They're
maybe
not,
the other. They're not.
At the beginning of the episode, there's an establishing shot where they're clearly like 2 suns. They're 2 hot flaming balls of gas. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, this is it's got to be a trinary star system. That's the only thing. That can
Maybe it is.
It.
We also have that magistrate shows up again at the end when he's pissed off at Burnham. Like, why did you save these prisoners? Why are you just letting them roam around on your ship all willy-nilly like this? And she's like, yo, bro, you ain't got any authority anymore. Like, you're a magistrate of like what colony? Like that one that just got destroyed? Like
that was a supremely satisfying scene, by the way. It was like really great. That. The way she told him off was like so. It was just like really on point. She basically was like, "Oh, you're the magistrate of the colony that just got destroyed, right?" And like, I think that's it right now. She's like pointing. She's just like casually like points like, "Oh, what colony?" Like By the way,
we know how she feels about politicians, right?
Yeah.
They've made that very clear this season. And this guy is like he ruled over a colony through the tyranny of the Emerald Chain. So maybe he was a fairly benevolent guy, but he's still part of a pretty messed up system from everything we know about the Emerald Chain.
But he's continuing this like awful tradition. He's so programmed in that way, like that he would continue these things. It's kind of terrible that he's in charge anyway. So he's a bad guy in my opinion. I think he got exactly what he deserved.
Yeah, I don't think I would have much patience for any Emerald Chain bureaucrats either.
Right.
Or I guess ex-Emerald. I guess the Emerald Chain is dissolved, right? They always talk about it in like the past tense this season.
Yeah,
whenever it's brought up.
It's pretty much dissolved, but like what I like is that this season we're getting a lot. It's neat that it's the shadow of the Emerald Chain is still there, and we're getting a lot of like repercussions.
It doesn't just
like,
disappear.
Right.
There's like it hangs over for a little bit.
Yeah, which
I like that
really
too.
Like,
yeah, that's cool actually. It does have like a little bit of realism to it. Oh, by the way, no big deal, but the computer system Zora can experience emotions now. So let's just mention that and kind of gloss over it.
I love the way they've been handling Zora, because it's clearly going somewhere towards at least reaching the point of when
of Calypso.
Yeah, like I don't know if we're ever gonna get more answers about Calypso, but I like that.
I mean, they keep bringing it up. They keep doing stuff with Zora, so
right. So
they're aware of it on some level.
They're aware of it, and they're playing around with it too, which is so. It tells me that there's something exciting on the way. Hopefully, it's exciting. We've been disappointed by reveals before, but I do like this because we knew Zora had emotions from.
We see her fall in love. When we first met Zora back in 2018 or 2000. That was 2000. Yeah, 2018. Yeah.
And we don't really know what happened to the crew. Like, should we trust Zora?
That does raise some ethical questions. Like, okay, there's a sentient being that's basically can listen to any of us at any time, see whatever we're doing, is in control of if we actually have access to the air we need to breathe to live.
It's true.
Our entire ship,
she saved them.
our home.
It's true.
Yeah, so it is kind of weird, but I think they must have something later in the season they're building to. Maybe they're putting it off to season 5, because I mean last year they were doing some Zora stuff and it never. I take that back. They did have the sphere data dot 23's help save the day in the finale last year.
And that's how Zora got downloaded to them, and so it was actually Zora, I guess, in a way. Stress Free K says, I hope not. I do love Zora, and I see her finding the solution to the DMA. That's an interesting that would be an interesting way to go. I would be interested and curious, but I also think that, like, I don't know, it's a tough one, but it's an interesting idea. And then I like that Beetlebomb number 47 says, Zora trapped Craft. She can't be trusted. There you go.
No, she didn't trap. She gave him a shuttlecraft so he could
That's
go.
True.
She loved him enough to let him go.
She did love him enough to let him go. It's true. It's true. But yeah, this was cool. I did get the sense from Burnham's reaction that she was startled, which is a natural a natural
like
reaction.
Burnham was like, oh wow, I'm gonna have to deal with this too. Okay. It's a lot on my plate, but
an emerging life form, an intelligent, sapient, feeling life form that's
I got,
that's completely
my best
digital.
friend just moved. I'm trying to deal with this anomaly that could destroy any planet at any moment. My boyfriend just lost his entire family and planet and had like the most tragic thing ever in his life just happened. And like,
it's crazy.
I have like this boss at work I don't really get along with like the president, and she's just been riding my ass. They're like, oh, okay, now my ship is alive and having emotions. That's great. There's something else to worry about.
It's true.
She does return the orb to the woman though, and she gets her little hologram family tree complete, and we see that she's pregnant, so the family line will continue. Will live on.
That was one of the reasons I love this scene and found it particularly touching, was that, like, to me, heritage and knowing the story of your family, while I don't think that should define you if you don't feel like aligned with that story, I do think it's important to know it so you can know what what your kin did in the past and like what things might affect you in the future and whatever. Yeah, I did find it. That's
a cool thing to have if you can, because I didn't have that like in my family. Like no one, like I asked someone like, oh, what was like my great grandfather like, and people were like, oh, I don't know, I have no idea what he is. Like it wasn't a priority for my family to like keep that information or like pass it down. I've tried to like look into it a little bit, and it was cool. Like when I went to Ireland a couple years ago, like I got to find what I think is like the ancestral home of the Fatheree back when it was like O'Flaherty before it was changed to Fatheree.
Interesting.
But it was fun to like, even though I'm envious of people who are in families that have done like a good job like documenting that and maintaining that. I got the privilege of being able to kind of like unravel it myself, but
yeah, that's part of the fun too. My family kind of does a good job at it, but like not the best job. And we don't have like a book or anything with our lineage, like the House Stark or House, whatever, like anything sort of like that. But I did start helping one of my cousins put together like a legit document, and of course I've done these genetic. I've done the genetic thing, which now I regret because they're going to create like a clone of me, 200 years from now to fight in some battle on another planet. But whatever. Yeah,
or your insurance company in 10 years is going to start charging you higher premiums because they're going to be like, oh, well, you're like genetically inclined to develop this type of symptom,
I do kind of regret it, but it did reveal some interesting things that I wouldn't have found out any other way. But what I was kind of like, the nitpicky kind of part of me was like, why don't they back this information up? Like, you shouldn't like lose your whole family history on a little tiny like piece of jewelry.
I mean, I suppose just the actual the
I
idea
think,
that like
yeah.
it's passed down.
Yeah,
I think
that's
is
the
just
important.
the sentimental value. Like, yeah, she could probably just
100%.
like go copy it into another one, but like she wants like that real one that has been in her family
Good
for
point. Good point.
two
And
hundred
culturally,
years.
they might have a tradition where, like, if you lose the one, it's just, like maybe that's they put so much importance on this that like it is something that's that sacred. So I could see that too.
Well, are you ready to talk about our B story
Yeah,
with
absolutely. That was fun
Stamets
talking about the A
and
stories. Yeah.
Tarka and get into the Tarka stuff? Stamets is all in a he's in a tizzy at the beginning of the episode. He's pissy Stamets. Like when we get to see like pissy Stamets, he's not thrilled by I guess kind of like a celebrity scientist. Ron Tarka is just like he's like well known. He's like a kind of a big famous dude who I guess never returns Stamets's calls or emails.
It's
Yeah,
so interesting. Yeah.
he's the guy working on like the new next gen spore drive that they've mentioned, but or Aurelio, Kenneth Mitchell's character from season 3, he's still around, but I guess Aurelio is
Yeah.
working on it with Tarka.
Yeah, that was nice to hear Aurelio mention. It made me a little sad. I hope I hope we get more of Kenneth Mitchell, but I know
Kenneth Mitchell said in Vegas, he said that they figured out a way to get him to appear in season 4.
Genius.
So.
Okay, that makes me really happy. But I appreciated all the mentions of Aurelio in this episode. It was kind of a cool thing to remember that character and of course to remember Ken Mitchell.
Yeah, and we got to see Stamets and Culber kind of together, being a couple, being supportive of each other. When Culber's
Which
like,
we haven't
just
seen.
let it roll
I feel
off
like
of
we
you.
haven't seen that in a while. Like I love those moments in season 1. That was like one of the highlights of season 1 for me, was like their relationship and how like I don't know, it just like was like a regular relation. There was no big deal about it. It was just like cute, like a couple like discussing their day.
It's almost
that
kind of
thing.
iconic, like the when they're brushing their teeth in the bathroom.
Yeah, like that scene in particular,
Yeah.
exactly. And so this like totally kind of gave me that vibe, and it was just nice to see them like after they've been through a lot. Like they've been through
In season 2, when they almost broke up, when Culber was an asshole after he resurrected from the mushroom realm.
Absolutely. And then even just like last season, it was like they were busy worrying about the burn and Adira, and like great, like they were
I felt last season they had like some happy couple moments.
they did.
too,
No,
though.
but I'm not saying they didn't have happy
But
couple
it was
moments,
often
but, like,
couched with them parenting Adira.
right. And this
So-
was just like a moment of them together in bed, just having that pillow talk, and I don't know, it just like it touched all the right buttons for me. I was just like, oh, and of course I was like, that's like just I want them to be my space dads now.
Well, I was really impressed with Tarka, and that's what stood out to me.
Great new character.
Again, talking about how like we kind of need Jet Reno to have like some sparks on the ship. We definitely get that with Tarka. Like he might be the new Philippa Giorgio, actually. We don't know if he's gonna end up being a good guy or a bad guy or what. But I got the impression he will be a recurring character. And that's how it felt to me. With how things end and as much screen time as they give him. But they do some cool visual explanations of the anomaly, I guess, for the audience with the pea and the mashed potatoes.
Yeah, that was a great moment.
That was another good little detail when he replicated cold mashed potatoes. Because if you think like if you replicate mashed potatoes, it's going to come out, steaming hot, and you stick your hands in it and try to shape it, you're going to burn the shit out of your hands. So, good job, whoever decided to throw that detail into the script. But yeah, so it's like a one little pea controls like the circle of dark matter. It's basically what they were trying to show the audience and show Captain Saru or Mr. Saru, whatever we're calling him.
Yeah.
But
100%. Tarka reminded me of I know you've watched BSG, so it's when the lawyer character was it Ramo when he first appeared, like the lawyer
the guy who played Badger in Firefly, and then he's also in Doctor Who. He plays the same character as his dad, but younger.
Right, exactly. That guy, like,
that dude.
Remember how like he kind of made
this actor is in The Expanse also.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's totally
he was,
true.
Like vice president of Earth or undersecretary.
Right, he was great in that show too, which I'm enjoying the current new season of that as well. But he was just great. Like immediately someone, whether you like them or not, they're just charismatic. Like the character is just super charismatic and interesting. Like, there's a lot going on in inside that character's brain, and you can tell he's like really smart and just like
Star Trek kind of has a tradition of like these smart assholes. When he steps
absolutely,
on the
yeah.
ship and he's like, "Oh, it's like being on an antique," or like, "Oh,
And
Kelpians, you have the weirdest feet." Like,
And it's funny because we have had, I mean, yeah, like we've had our asshole scientist on Discovery this whole time, which is Stamets. Like, love
yeah.
him or hate him, he
So
is
here's
kind of
like
a
the
jerk.
bigger.
Like, he's like
This
a
guy is a
bigger.
bigger. He's like smarter than you and also more of a dick than you.
Exactly, which is why Stamets is like totally obsessed with him. Uh, when he finally meets him, he goes totally gaga for the guy, and he's just like, yeah, yeah, whatever you want, let's blow up the Discovery. Like, it's like,
But well, I don't think he was like you kind of hero worshiping him. I think he was more like envious or jealous of him.
I don't know, like towards he kind of changes his tone.
They
from
kind of have
being
a
like,
bro moment. They kind of have a bro
yeah,
moment
he
when they get
changes
into the
his tone
science.
from being adversarial to like being more like, like doting, and I felt that was just because, yeah, he is impressive. Like, and that's the cool thing about Stamets is that, like, while he will start off like a certain way, I think all he just wanted was like a moment of like acknowledgement. Like, he was just pent up. I'd be frustrated too if I invented something and it was being improved upon or advanced upon, and the person heading up that like, it's totally understandable why Stamets, has all this like pent up aggression towards this guy, right?
Yeah, when he's
But
like,
then when you finally
my
meet him,
my spore drive saved the year. Like, we wouldn't
yeah,
have gotten the dilithium planet if not for my spore drive from 900 years ago.
I do like that. I do like he does a couple things a couple times where in this scene in particular he finally, I think, is where he like lowers his shields a little bit, but Tarka's like, yes, your research for the sport drive is brilliant, but also I see a lot of things to be improved. Whatever he says in that one scene, it's just like kind of like a kiss kick moment. It's like give you a compliment but kick you in the butt at the same time, like. And then here he does it again, but he kind of like stops doing
He
it after
complimented
that.
him on the
Well, he says
synthetic
like
or on the primordial wormhole theory.
wormhole theory,
Where
exactly.
he's
That
like,
scene.
you're wrong, but you weren't entirely wrong. Where it's actually it's a synthetic wormhole. That's the theory
Yeah.
that they're testing, right? Is that someone is moving this anomaly with a synthetic wormhole, which would be like very advanced if you can create your own stable wormhole,
I also like that he,
right?
yeah, and I also like that moment. I think that's where it all changed, and I like that they did that because it's totally in line with like Stamets' character. But like he basically tosses him the schematics. He's like, "But how could you even do one?" And he tosses the schematics, and Stamets is looking at it. And he's like,
Oh yeah.
"Whoa,
Yeah,
this could
Stamets gets
work."
excited. Yeah, when he's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
he's
this
like,
actually might be possible." Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
yeah,
there is kind of a tonal change
shift.
there
Yeah.
in Stamets' attitude, where he's like, "Okay, yeah, let's get into the real meat of the science here,
Yeah,
and
you
be
clearly
science
know what you're
bros."
talking about, and I clearly can learn from you. So I'm going to put aside my ego and just go with it, which is cool.
Well, let's talk about like the actual experiment that they conduct. That I wish they had. He said like we need a bigger room. I kind of wish that they had like gone into the shuttle bay because that's like the
Yes, me
biggest
too.
room on the ship.
Shit,
But
it's true.
they're in engineering because Jet Reno is there, and they wanted to have scenes with Grumpy Lady. They do like the weird teaching Saru how to scream, which I think some people might have cringed at this, but I don't know. I thought it was weird, but like weird in a good way.
Yeah, it was good. It was interesting though because in the trailer there's like an echo they added to that. Like it made it sound like more like a lion scream, and they took that out, which I didn't mind. But I was curious, like, oh, why'd they change it? It was kind of cool the other way.
I did see
too.
that on Twitter. Someone said like, "Hear Saru roar." It might have been Doug Jones or someone had like retweeted that, but it got so weird though. Like when Saru like screams back in his face, like the Saru prosthetics, like just that face looks so alien. I thought like at that moment I was like, oh, like this Saru creature is about to like stretch its mouth open and bite off this guy's head or something. Like it looked scary, It's like very like inhuman. Doug Jones just like totally transformed into from like a person to like some monstrous creature.
Absolutely. My mom still has trouble sometimes with Saru. She's gotten warmed up to him, but I remember when we first started watching Discovery, she kept saying like, "Are you sure he's a good guy?" I'm like, "Why, Mom? Because he looks scary." Like it's like I kind of. She's like, "Yeah, he looks scary. He scares me. His nightmare face." Like I was like, "Okay, jeez." I always thought Saru looked a little scary, but also cool. I like the makeup so much because you do see Saru a range of emotions. Like you can definitely sense the anger, and you can definitely
It's through
sense
Doug
like
Jones. He's such
it's
a
Doug
physical
Jones, yeah,
actor. Because there's actually,
yeah,
if you stop and look at it, there's very ex- little physical expression he can do with his face. It's all done with his eyes and with how he positions his head and how he's
right.
moving, how he's standing.
Well, yeah, he's a genius because, like, I mean, eyes, like, those are contact lenses. You can't even
Yeah,
like dilate your
but he can
pupils,
still do
but
he
he
can
does it.
still do
Yeah,
so much with his eyes,
yeah, it's true.
and
I
just
agree.
like every little movement he does is just it communicates so much emotion. Because I often
Yeah,
forget like how restrictive that makeup is until I see like episodes where they have like other Kelpians, and then you can kind of like they kind of all look the same and they kind of all like act the same, and I think
yeah.
a lot of it is just because you don't get much of the face. That's something that I kind of prefer with like the older, simpler makeup we got in Star Trek. I think Michael Westmore was like really good at leaving enough exposed that the actors can work with their face. And I feel like
Yeah,
a lot of the more modern makeup designs are so elaborate that they hide a lot of that.
I noticed they figured out a way to like in previous seasons, even like the Orions were wearing full facial makeup, as was pointed out. Like the like all the way up to their like lip line, you would have like a full like mask or whatever. But
Yeah.
I didn't think of that. The kid who played the cadet in the previous episode, it didn't look like that at all. It just looked like, in a
I thought
good
it
way,
looked
it looked
like
like it
that.
was really in a good
Yeah,
way. I thought it
he
looked
looked
painted. He looked painted, I thought, which is cool.
I thought it made him look almost like too similar, like the same face as Osira's nephew in season
No, not
3.
at all. They look so different. You can't tell Andorians apart, Fatheree. I mean, sorry, Orions apart,
Orion's,
Father. Yeah, you can't tell Orions apart. You don't have the Orion eye yet.
I guess not.
The Eye of Orion. That's what. There you go.
Well, I don't. I could tell Susan Oliver apart from the Orions and Bound,
Yes, that's
but
true. But going back to this anomaly scene, I loved the tech and the science behind it. I love that they were doing like an actual miniature version of the anomaly inside the Discovery. It did feel like the stakes were really high. Like I did feel the nervousness of like, what if the experiment went out of control in a sense? Like maybe not the whole disco blowing
it
up,
was
but like
explained well though. Like they did,
yeah,
they did a good job of like explaining like how it works and then making it still like kind of exciting. Like
yeah, it's
okay,
true.
this might blow up our ship, but we're gonna have like this kill switch and wait till like we're down to like 5% of losing. And the idea of like the more power we give the anomaly, the more power we have to give to containing it and like balancing that. And I don't know why they needed to do it in the middle of this transport evacuate. Like, is it like that urgent? Like, we have to do this experiment like right now on the Discovery. But I'm glad that there was that energy, that there was like that sense of urgency, that excitement infused into here.
I don't know that it was explained per se, but I had that same question, and my personal answer from what I've inferred is that like it's possible that like that if they were successful in getting the information, they could have done something right then. That like having that
Well,
telemetry,
they would know who the DMA
right?
controller is controlled because
Right.
the device at the center of it. I think they're calling the DMA controller,
Controller, yeah,
but they need to
exactly.
know who the DMA controller is. In other words, like who is driving it, who has the remote control
Yeah.
that's steering this thing around.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the only explanation I have for why they had like a sense of urgency to do it here. But yeah, certainly I hope that they do the experiment again because like on a starbase or something where they have like a huge room or they could do it in space actually. Like you could create a miniature DMA and like be far enough away from it. You know what I mean? That like you could still capture all the sensor data, but you wouldn't need as much of a containment issue. There wouldn't be the containment
Yeah.
issue as much.
Although the next scene that we're going to talk about kind of confuses me with
Mm.
what the actual objective or what Tarka's what his goal actually was during all this. But I did like just the visualization and the 32nd century technology of like, oh, we can just create this little holographic kill switch to give to the captain so that
that was cool.
When he's like, okay, enough is enough, I'm gonna pull the plug on this. And just the reaction of Tarka and Stamets. They're like, come on, man, you couldn't let us just do it like a little bit longer.
Yeah, but like, what did they
Stamets
want?
does say, but they got a lot of data.
Like
they did get a lot of info, but not everything.
Yeah, like, so like, what were they gonna wait till like 0.5% of containment? Like, it seems like 5% was like too. That was like my point too, my safety point as well. Maybe 2%.
And then the line from Jet was so perfect when she says that's the closest you've ever come to killing all of us, and that's saying a lot. Like, I love that. I love the deadpan delivery of it.
Yeah, that was great.
Oh, and she had another good line at the beginning of the scene when she says, "Wait till Tilly finds out we were all sucked into a wormhole 3 days after she left."
That was great. It's true.
But we get that final scene that actually ends the episode between Book and Tarka, where they're having drinks in the disco bar, and Tarka's telling him like, "No, I could have told you that it wasn't the Metrons, it wasn't the Nasine." Like, he seems that he might know more than he let on initially, and Book seems like Book is ready to just kill. He wants to murder whoever is in control of the DMA. He's like, how could anyone be doing this? Like, I don't care how powerful they are. But Tarka does say like, oh yeah, like they have the power of like a hyper giant star. Like there's some bad
That's
mofos.
huge. That's a crazy kind of star too. It's like to have that kind of power. But like that is an interesting question. It rules out so many possibilities, and it makes it like almost. It makes me almost think it's going to be someone new that we haven't heard of before, but we'll see.
It's the part that doesn't interest me, where like I don't want the season to build up to like this big climactic battle between like good guys and bad guys, and then the good guys find a way to blow up the bad guys and then stop the DMA and everyone's saved. And I don't know. It's just I was less interested in that, and that's what I was kind of dreading. But I like Tarka, so it's like I was saying, like the concept I'm very opposed to, but the execution I'm having a lot of fun of. We'll see how this. I'll just have to write it out and see where I ultimately end up. What is the scar on his neck?
That's remember Rin was putting that on those prisoners in the Emerald Chain prisoners on that junkyard planet that the nephew.
Right.
Operated. So he once had one of those devices on, so it's basically threatening him to blow up his head. And he also mentions earlier that he has something in common with Stamets, I think, where the device that they use to control
the neural
Stamets,
lock.
The neural lock.
Yeah,
so.
he kind of when he's bonding with Stamets, he does have kind of like that moment where he says like, "Oh yeah, like that neural lock, like that's painful."
That's one of the interesting things about this scene is like up until now you see this character as like an arrogant SOB sort of like who's just kind of
he's very unlikable.
Unlikable, but then when you see what he's been through and the line that he uses here where he says something along the lines of like anger can be a powerful motivation or something like that, or a powerful I forget what he says exactly. I wish I'd written it down, but that line alone just like made me go, whoa, like this guy's
but he's also it's also kind of ominous, like maybe he's gonna end up being a problem for our heroes.
Yeah, right. And so there's a lot of it's very clever. The character, I think, like if you don't like some of the technicalities, or like I could see how like not liking the direction it's going with the anomaly, but then they put this character in and I'm just like you, it's like, okay, well, all right, maybe I'm gonna get another like thing that I'm gonna love about this. Maybe I'm not gonna love the anomaly reveal so much as what I was hoping, but maybe there's gonna be something about this season,
a tradition of Star Trek, or that's kind of a tradition of Discovery, is that unfortunately sometimes the plots are weak, but the character stuff is always pretty strong. This is the show that gave us Anson Mount's Pike.
Yeah,
this gave us Culber and Stamets. This gave us Tilly and Burnham.
Great.
This gave us Captain Lorca.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like
We've always had some really, really powerful like characters. Yeah, it's true.
The plots have underwhelmed me many times, but the characters have always been impressive.
Yeah. Here.
Unless we're talking about Reese and Bryce and
And Osira, I was disappointed with Osira too,
Yeah.
but whatever.
But
It's
a lot, but there's always still been compelling characters, even when some of them aren't.
Yeah. This one definitely is from the start. Hopefully, he keeps it going. But you were gonna say
I'm pretty excited to see wherever they go with Tarka. It makes me also wonder. He's Ryzian. He's from Ryza. Is Ryza part of the Emerald Chain, or was it part of the former Emerald Chain?
I get the impression it was still a pleasure planet of some sort. Like I don't know.
I don't know how. Where would the tourism come from?
Yeah,
if people don't
maybe
have
just
work,
the local cluster. I don't know what was going on, but
the Emerald Chain was using it like it was their personal pleasure.
That might have been that might have been why he hated it, because that makes a lot of sense because. That's interesting. It would be interesting to get a lot more of this because they they also dropped another few interesting nuggets. Is he hated growing up on Risa? He felt so stymied and
he didn't want to party on the beach. He wanted to go do science.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's interesting. It is interesting, but maybe Risa became an Emerald Chain kind of.
I'd like to know. I'd like to know
well.
what all worlds were in the Emerald Chain. What's still in the Federation? What's an independent operator? I know they probably don't want to identify everything because then they're kind of boxed into whatever they identify.
Exactly.
But I'd like to have more of these little tidbits.
Yeah, here. Novels, that's where we get that stuff, I think.
Well, last but not least, we do have this brief sea story with Culber, where he basically has to call in some help from Kovich, who is so important and so busy, he only has 10 minutes to spare. But this was interesting to me. So, Helen, that last week they briefly mentioned, oh yeah, Culber's under pressure. He might have some things he needs to work through. They just barely touch on that when Book asks him, do you have anything you need to wipe away? And Culber's yeah, and I need to deal with that someday. One of the things I like with the show that they're doing in season 4 is when things are obvious, they don't draw it out too long. It got pretty obvious that Tilly wanted to go do something different in her life, and they addressed that very quickly.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever is going to happen to Javini, the murderous co-op,
it was also addressed. Yeah,
they addressed that. They already brought Navarre back into the Federation. They're okay, Navarre wants to come back in. Guess what? Now they're back in. I like that they don't draw these things out too long when they're obvious. And
it's
then
been just right. It's been very Goldilocksy this season. Yeah,
yeah. You got to find that just right spot. They set up. They told us oh yeah, Culber has some issues, but they don't draw what's going on with Culber? What's wrong with him? Here they show it to us very, very plainly and bluntly, as Kovich would. He gives us the brutal honesty about Culber's savior complex. He has survivor's guilt from being resurrected. Kovich,
he's all kinds of effed up.
It's you're basically just walking around giving the middle finger to everyone who's ever lost a loved one, which is everyone. I thought it was weird that in the 32nd century, Kovich would still know what the middle finger meant, but I think that's probably something that still exists in the 23rd century, and so he's so smart. He's using 23rd century language for a 23rd century person.
Yeah, that's we'll just chalk it up to that. It's true.
But this is also a lot of COVID overlap. I know I've heard that in right now, a lot of therapists have just been overwhelmed with the amount of patients 100%. They're trying to take on. With the pandemic has just wrecked a lot of people's mental health. And what he's saying, oh yeah, we're dealing with this anomaly. It could strike anywhere, but I'm telling everyone, it's gonna get better. We'll figure out a way to stop it. We'll make it go away. And yeah, he's am I lying to people? Is that true? And they could have done this. They could have had him open up to Saru. I guess Saru is kind of busy in this episode, but they could have actually had him talk to Book. But Book was also busy in this one. But I thought it was interesting they chose Kovich for this. Part of him being so mysterious.
they've been having a little dialogue too, because he mentions Dr. Kovich earlier this
yeah.
season. Like, so it does.
Yeah,
They have
it was
some
Kovich's
yeah.
idea to bring Tilly on that field
Right.
trip last week.
Right. So like Kovich is like very involved.
Okay,
Like,
so yeah,
I
they
still
they
don't know what
communicate.
the hell he
they
does.
they
Like,
IM back and forth.
yeah, they I am back and forth. I still don't know what the hell his role is, but I kind of think that's okay. Like, you know,
Yeah,
he's
I
some
like the
kind of like
mystery. I
yeah,
like the
yeah,
mystery of it.
exactly. Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want him to be Section 31. I'm tired of people saying that.
I know it's like the obvious thing because he's the man in black or whatever, but yeah, I don't think that's where it's gonna go. It is interesting. He's a doctor. We know that now. So he's Dr. Kovich. Like, you know, that can mean a PhD. It doesn't necessarily mean like a medical doctor, but he did have a lot of information on Yor's physiology, and like he seemed to know a lot about like what was ailing Yor last season. So maybe he does practice medicine to some degree. What if he's like chief of Starfleet Medical or some weird thing and we don't even know? Like,
I don't.
you know, like,
I kind of don't even
I
want to
don't
know
think
like his
he
official
is.
title.
Yeah,
I'd like it if they
it's
just
like,
are always coy
never
about
just,
it.
Yeah.
Like, they should
Dr.
actually have a
Kovich,
character be like, "What is it that you even do exactly?" And he's like, "I just do what I'm needed to do. You know, I help, I consult, I blah, blah, you know, whatever."
Kovich has been a cool character from the start, but this was my favorite scene with him in it. Like, I feel like David Cronenberg really like went into his acting chops a little more. He's a director, of course, but I've never thought he's like the best actor. I mean, he just kind of like is David Cronenberg on
And I know
screen.
he said a while ago, I think he said like when season 3 was airing, that Discovery is going to use him a lot because he is nearby. He lives really close to where they shoot this. He's very cheap. He's an affordable actor, and he also has a lot of free time right now. So he said, like, you'll probably see a lot of me.
It is a cool coup just to have David Cronenberg in your show. Like, I think that's like one of the things that Discovery will be remembered for, like incorporating him. But he's getting better as an actor. I thought he was great in this scene, and the two of them, Wilson Cruz, I've always loved his performance style, and he's just like phenomenal. But the two of them were very believable in this scene, and I just like loved. Kovich's cutting like just goes straight to the heart of the matter, and I'm just like, yeah, you know. And it's like,
really,
really
then he's like, I gotta go. I got a 2:00.
He's like, bye, Felicia.
Or
yeah,
he's like, okay, you have 8 minutes, 30 seconds left.
Yeah, left. It's true. Like all these things.
I have days like that where I feel like, okay, like I really only have like 10 minutes to deal with this. I got like 30 other things to do. I've scheduled out my entire day, and I'm already like behind on 5 things, and 2 other things have popped up. Like we got, I don't have time to like hold your hand or bullshit with you. We got to get through this and move on because I got other stuff to do.
And the other thing I liked is that, like, you know, that's what he wanted, but he was not prepared for what he got, which was great. You know, that it felt like he was having a real breakthrough, because, like, you know, we all expect kind of like we go to people for advice, but we all have this idea in our heads of like how it's gonna go.
We want them to like reinforce something or like tell us something we want to hear, not what we need to hear.
Exactly. And so we have an idea of what that might be like, but when the person just goes all out and surprises you in a way that you're like, oh, that was hard to hear, that hurt like hell to hear, but it was what I needed. I think that's what came across in this, and it was cool.
Well, I probably need to tell myself that, like, oh yeah, like you work too much, and
all of us need to do that. It's true.
The content I create, I do like. I love doing it for our audience, but it definitely takes a toll on me. I spend a lot of time, you know, getting the screenshots and notes in order before we go live on YouTube, and then editing the audio for the podcast listeners.
It's very appreciated. I'm a fan of the show, even though I'm a guest as well. I love your show, so good. You all do a good job.
Well, thanks. I appreciate hearing that.
But here's the scene that I really loved. Look, you picked a great screenshot. Sorry, audio audience, you can't see this, but this is just giving me the biggest goosebumps and like warm fuzzy feelings right now.
Yeah, no, they're a great couple. Like, you know, whenever I see them happy, it makes me happy. A lot of people say like, well, a lot of people say a happy couple is a boring couple, but I think it might be like a little harder to write, but you can still write it, you know.
I'll just cite, you know, Stephen and Elise Keaton. That worked really well. So, like, you know,
my go-to is Lois and Clark from Superman comics.
100%.
And now the hit CW/HBO Max TV show,
which I'm so excited is coming back soon.
Yeah, season 2 coming in like a month, so very soon. Sohel, do you have any remaining thoughts on the episode before we go into the Gornegg section of the show?
Thank you. It was very enjoyable, like doing this discussion and breakdown with you. I had a lot of fun, and yeah, it just kind of affirms how good this episode is, and I'm just dying to go watch it again. I can't wait to go see it again. And really, again, definitely experienced the disappointment with the DMA, but it's mingled with curiosity and excitement, so it's not the worst disappointment. I think like it's better also to be disappointed early in the season, like rather than at the end.
Well, yeah,
of the
then you
season.
can kind of brace for it.
Yeah,
there
you
is some
can brace
truth to
for
that.
it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So like rather than like at the end of the season when you're like, no, I was so invested in this idea. Like so now I can shake up my investment a little and like try to see where the show's taking it.
And I've enjoyed so much of season 4. I'd be surprised if there's not more stuff in the second half of the season that I don't enjoy. And if they end up totally dropping the ball for me, or just walk away from it, a bit disappointed in the season overall, that's okay. There's 4 other Star Trek shows, and I've been
that's
the
always
3
been the case,
have already come out. I've been digging Picard and Lower Decks and Prodigy, and I'm super hyped for Strange New Worlds. So yeah, it's not nothing to fear. We'll see how it plays out. Hopefully we like it. Maybe we won't, but that's okay.
I have a good feeling about this, as one of my heroes used to like to say before he got jaded and cynical.
Well, let's just hop on over to the Gorn section of the show. These are all the Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections I found in the episode that I thought were worth pointing out. Well, let's start off on those beautiful ships we got in the opening. There's the NSS T'Pol, I guess the Navarre science ship.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
And also the USS Janeway. I don't know if the Janeway is the Constitution-looking one or the Eisenberg.
My initial guess was that the Janeway would be the Connie, but it would also make sense for it to be an Eisenberg class. And aren't they science vessels? And Janeway's kind of more sciencey. Matt, I stole that from Matt on my stream, but yeah.
But it was cool that the T'Pol has the Vulcan warp ring around it, like we saw in Enterprise, and then
it's detached like the new all the new 32nd century stuff. Yeah,
it looks like a whole 32nd century
version. Yeah,
yeah.
The lineage is clear. Yeah,
I think it'd be cool if the Navarre ships were called warbirds,
or something else influence. Not peace birds, maybe. No, I don't know, but
peace birds. Logic birds.
Logic birds. But there is a feeling of Romulan influence. I can't quite put my finger on it, but
there's a little D-Deridex and
D-Deridex-ishness. Yeah, I feel like something's going on there.
But these, of course, were named after Captain Catherine Janeway of the show Star Trek Voyager,
and another Enterprise/TOS connection. Yep.
Yeah, T'Pol was in the original series in Amok Time, and she's in that Forge trilogy in season 4 of Enterprise.
Total babe, that logic babe.
The logic babe. Hashtag logic babe. Well, the Acolyte were also from Star Trek Enterprise in the episode Civilization way back in season 1 of that show, where they were an extremely primitive pre-warp civilization. So they've definitely come a long way by the 32nd century. And we even have the magistrate say, think Draylen.
Right.
And Draylen, of course, was a mythological deity in their culture that we see a Draylen mask in a shop on their planet in the episode Civilization.
I don't mean this as a jab at all, but I'm so impressed that the makeup design is virtually the same as it was in it's virtually the same.
I think it's a little different. They actually kind of smooth it down a little bit, so
right,
I thought it actually looked a little
you
different.
Could see 900 years of evolution and living on a different environment maybe doing that to you, but I don't know. I liked that it wasn't out of control.
Speaking of Star Trek aliens, we get a bunch of godlike aliens name dropped by Admiral Vance when he is talking about the Metrons from Arena in the original series, the Nassine, the name of the caretakers from Voyager. He mentions the surviving Iconian. So I guess some of the Iconian Empire is still alive, in
interesting.
The video game Star Trek Online.
That was a really interesting. Wait, that's in the video games, right? I guess is that what you're saying?
We first hear about the Iconians in the Star Trek Next Generation episode Contagion when they actually discover Iconia. And of course the Q Continuum, which they've been out of contact for 600 years. So from the time
100
of
years.
Yeah, it's like 180, I think, years from like the time of Picard.
Right.
They can still play with the Q and not contradict what Vance said. Stamets also mentions the Josep. We haven't heard about them in a while, but they were the mushroom people from season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. They lived in the mycelial network. And on the bridge of the Discovery, we see a slurm at the ops station. The slurm is actually a alien design from the Kelvin universe, from Star Trek Beyond. There were a couple of them walking around on Yorktown Station. So this is the first I think they were in the background in Star Trek Discovery season 3 at one point. This is the first we've seen one in Starfleet.
Of course, there's a very valid and good explanation for all the humanoidness in our galaxy in Star Trek, but I do think it's funny that like the head would be so different, but then like the body would just be like a dude with gloves on. Here they have actually different kinds of hands. I wish they had done that. Yeah. Actually, that's cool.
And one last familiar legacy Star Trek alien species to mention, that is of course the Ryzians. Or Ryzens, or
no, you're right.
However
Ryzian.
You say it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's Ryzian. Yeah, like a Ryzian slut is what Martok's wife said. But yeah, they were first shown in the Next Generation episode Captain's Holiday. Sometimes they have a white circle around that marking on their forehead. Sometimes they don't. They've shown up in Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, Lower Decks. And then one time in Las Vegas, me and Larry Nemeczek became Ryzian. So
look at that.
Ryzen. So that's a thing that happens. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But I just wanted to share that.
Aha!
On the in the prison on the colony, the woman prisoner was being held in confinement for counting cards. The Tongo Club, Tongo being the game that Ferengi frequently played. I think the first time we see it is the episode Rules of Acquisition in Deep Space Nine Season 2.
Right on.
That's all I have on Gornegs. We did get some feedback on last week's episode, so I do have some subspace transmissions to share. This is all on All Is Possible on the episode last week with Tilly and the cadets.
Fatheree, you didn't think the connected asteroid station thing was close enough to the connected colony ship in the animated series to make it into the Gornegs? All right. I had to try.
I didn't.
I had to try. You're very strict. You got some real hard, fast rules there.
Well, doing like Prodigy and Discovery at the same time, sometimes I can't just be like, well, it's a maybe. It's gotta be like a definitive.
It's gotta be like a definite.
Like, are these mashed potatoes in reference to Close Encounters? Oh no,
yes!
Maybe they are, maybe they aren't.
I felt like they definitely were. That was like that one should have made it into the Gornegs too. That was gonna be my next suggestion. But
yeah.
All right.
We're gonna need a bigger room? Is that like Jaws now? Like
yes,
Jaws references.
It is. This is like a very Spielberg heavy episode. But anyways,
we're about out of time, so I'm just going to run through these. I'm just going to run through these tweets really fast. I'm just going to read these. But yeah, this is all about last week's episode. Some are positive. There's a few in here that are a little critical, but I'm just going to relay all of this to everyone, and you can make your own conclusions based on this. But this is just some of the feedback we got. Laura on Twitter said, "We just need so many spin-offs. Tilly at Starfleet Academy, Culber's weekly counseling session, Star Trek The Navarre Chronicles." So someone lobbying for more spin-offs, including the Academy spin-off. Dr. Lilo on Twitter says, "Best episode so far. Absolutely gripping and Star Trek as fuck. If there are still any old school fans avoiding the show because season 1 had weird looking Klingons, for fuck's sake, please watch on. It gets so fucking real." I agree. The show has grown tremendously.
Yeah.
Dr. Troy D. Wood says, Mary Wiseman was terrific in showing dimensionality to Tilly. The political intrigue between Navarre and the Federation also reminded me of DS9, one of my favorite Discovery episodes thus far. DM Zachary Paul says, this far in the future and we still don't have seatbelts, programmable matter, but no safety harness? How are pre-warp NASCAR drivers better protected than those cadets? Has no safety committee yet determined that screaming, brace for impact, isn't cutting it? Come on. Jag Bazooka says, I think Tilly's story was spot on. The character needs some time away from the front lines to process. She was literally a cadet when we met her, and since then she's been in a war, an alternate universe, where her counterpart was a murderer. The future. Poor girl needs a break.
She needed a break. Tilly got her break. She got a break. She's gonna get it.
An occasional optimist says, I really admire the way Tilly manages crisis and brings people together for a shared goal, survival. I appreciate the episodes actually wrapping up and not leaving me in an overly adrenalized and frustrated state. Programmable matter is the best.
Yes, I agree. I'm a stand for programmable matter as well.
Supergirl and Brainiac 5 says, I am getting frustrated with the number of people trying to wrangle Book's grief. It feels written by someone who has never experienced true catastrophic loss. I also felt Tilly was way OOC and, I guess, out of character and played into sexist stereotypes and tropes. I am a fan, but this ep was not good for me. Married with Television says, Burnham figured out the little-known diplomatic mechanism called checks notes. Having a committee? I still enjoyed it. Some Journey to Babel and Galileo 7 in there, but the diplomacy part, I was kind of like, really? To be fair, maybe the 4 months were mostly about other stuff, because I was talking about the 5, I think it was actually 5 months between seasons 3 and 4. But that's all I got on Subspace Transmissions. If you have thoughts on this episode you want to share with us, then hit me up on Twitter, comment on the Tex-Trek Facebook page, send me an email, however you want to go about that, and we might share that next week.
Yeah.
Right now, if you're watching live, you need to get ready to check out the Starfleet Boy After Dark channel, because
Spider-Man Spectacular! We're also going to talk about Wheel of Time, and we're also going to talk a little bit about The Expanse. So come on over. Hopefully Geek and Review's not asleep, and I'll be joined by Braxton and
poor guy. Get his Scottish ass out of bed.
Get your Scottish ass out of bed, Geek and Review.
Scottish arse.
Yeah, arse, that's right. We're gonna aim for maybe around 10:30ish, like closer. Okay. Maybe we'll go on a little earlier than that. But
so if you're checking us out live tonight on Friday, then you'd go over to Starfleet Boy After Dark at 10:30 Eastern time.
Eastern, yeah, it's cool.
But I got to run. It's actually
Fatheree, thanks for having me on. This was great.
Yeah, one of our regulars, Brian, his wife Holly, who's been on the show. It's her birthday that we're celebrating. So
happy birthday, Holly!
If you could just put in the comments right now, if you could just say happy birthday, Holly.
Woo!
She was on a lot of Discovery Season 2 discussions that we did a few years ago.
Oh, right on.
Everyone wish her a happy birthday. And just one last reminder, we'll be live next week on Saturday, not Friday, on Christmas Day.
Yep.
Until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.